And I'll use the New York 23 race that happened with Doug Hoffman a couple weeks ago as a really good example. Conservatives came out of the woodwork from across the country to get that guy in the race and to push Skousenfava out of the race, the Republican candidate, all of which I agree with and support. But then they fell short of putting him in the seat. They didn't finish what they started, partly because they were grossly underfunded, partly because they were not well enough organized. And at the end of the day, what started out to be a great idea ended up with another set of bad results of sitting another liberal in Congress. Now, the difference between what happened there and what needs to happen going forward is the Tea Party groups did a good job of vetting the belief systems of Doug Hoffman and getting him on a ticket. The precinct chair movement should have done a good job in the primaries of making sure that more conservative candidates like Hoffman actually become the Republican candidate to vote for in the primary stage before it's in a general election situation. And then at the end of the day, when we have a real conservative running against a Democrat in a district, we have to have the war chest able to compete with all the MoveOn.orgs and all of the Soros 527 groups and everything else in order to make sure that we can actually seat those people in those seats. And in the meantime, we need to be able to explain to people like Michael Steele that we have the ability to raise more money than the RNC itself can.
Yeah, let's talk about the money for just a second, JB. You mentioned that the goal for the Freedom Force is $10 million. Explain to me, number one, why is that so high? And then number two, what are the plans for the use of that money?
Well, as you know, $10 million is not a drop in the bucket when it comes to national politics. That's not even as much as what MoveOn.org itself raised and spent in the 2008 election cycle, not to mention the other 30 or 40 or 50 Soros organizations who also raised and spent those kinds of money. $10 million really is a starting point. We have basically stated we're not going to launch Freedom Force. We're not going to form the 527 and the likes until we have pledges for $10 million, because unless we have that kind of broad-based support from patriots across the country, we can't complete this mission either. And so $10 million is really a starting point. And if you look at where the money, people say they're not loyal. Yes, they are. Politicians in Washington, D.C. are very loyal to wherever the money comes from. Not where the votes come from, wherever the money comes from. And the fact is, the left outspends the right 10 or 20 to 1 in recent years.
So are you wanting to use the $10 million or whatever you end up raising for your Freedom Force Fund, are you wanting to use it in an advocacy way, as in, cap and trade is bad, urge your senator or representative to be against cap and trade, or are you wanting to use it for defeat John Smith now, he's a liberal's dream? I mean, which way are you going?
Both ways. All the above. They'll have to be a 527. They'll have to be a 501c4. They'll have to be a PAC, because you know how the laws work. The laws were written to make it very difficult to do what we're describing. So in order to function within the laws, we're going to have one of each of those types of organizations, because they're all limited in what they can do with the funds, how much they can take in and what they can do with those funds. So we're talking about doing all of the above. In some instances, issue advocacy, whether it be lobbying existing members of Congress on a particular issue or running issue ads during an election time frame, is part of the picture. But also supporting specific candidates directly is also part of the equation. Supporting other organizations who are doing good work out there, the people who are teaching Americans how to be directly engaged in the process at the precinct level. To the degree that we can, we want to support initiatives like that as well, and educational operations as well. But it all depends on how many, right now we have thousands of supporters. In 2 weeks we've got thousands of supporters. We need millions of supporters, partially because We don't want any one person to have to fund something like this by themselves. Alone, we do not have the kinds of power that are necessary to make the kind of changes that have to happen in this country. But united, we do. And so what we're looking for are those patriots who said, I'm done protesting, I'm done talking, I'm done blogging and complaining. And this is what happened to me, Matthew. I mean, I've been writing on this stuff for years, as you know. And years of readers have been writing me going, I agree with you, please do something. In other words, do something besides write about it. And so finally I decided, you know what, they're right. Why don't I do something besides write about it? Why don't I provide an answer? The best answer I can come up with. If it's not the greatest answer in the world, somebody point me in the direction of the better answer, and I'll be happy to get on board. But in the meantime, I feel compelled to do something.
Now, JB, you said your site's been up for a couple of weeks now, and you've already gotten thousands of folks to sign up and pledge support. I don't want to ask you your numbers yet because I know you're still trying to recruit folks and get more information out there. What do you do when you run into opposition, not from the media or not from institutional liberals, but from well-meaning people who say, no offense, JB, but I don't know you. Why in the world would I give you my money?
What I say to you is this. You will, before the week's out, waste $100 on dinner, cocktails, a party, tickets for the ball game. You will waste $100 somewhere before the week's over. $100 is what we're asking in average donations, but we don't even make you do that. You can put in $5, you can put in $25, you can put in $2,500, whatever works for somebody's budget. But on average, the strategy is assuming an average of $100 donation, and so far we're running right close to there. We're running right at about $95 average across the board. And so some people give less, some people give more. People give what they can, and that's what's important. But my answer to that person who says what you just said is that you're going to waste $100 on nothing before the week's over. Almost every American will. Why wouldn't you invest $100 just on the possibility that this could actually work? Because the theory is very simple. Somewhere, the numbers jump all over the place, but somewhere in excess of 1 million people marched on Washington, D.C. a few weeks back. September 12, was it? Nobody was there to listen. Nobody cared. And every person who went to Washington, D.C. to march spent $500, $600, $700, $800, $900 to go march and talk to each other because nobody from Washington, D.C. was there listening.
Yeah.
For $100 from 1 million Americans, do the math on that, we can find out whether or not this works. If everybody, myself included, loses my $100 because it didn't work, I'm out a good meal.
What is your, for lack of a better word, media strategy so people know, number one, about Freedom Force? I know you're doing it right now by being on this program, but updates, as in this is where we are right now, the big red thermometer, this is how much farther we have to go, stuff like that.
We're not doing any of the thermometer stuff. We decided that before we launched, and there's a few reasons. One, the people most interested in all the details, I can tell you, are the people who don't want us to get this off the ground.
That's right.
And so for that reason alone, we're not disclosing a lot of details. Because we're not disclosing a lot of details, we're not asking for any money yet. We're just asking for a show of support for the concept in the way of a pledge. Through that process, of course, we're building a mail list of people who go into the site, agree with what we're doing, and agree to make a pledge to support that kind of initiative. Once we reach a point where it looks like we're going to hit the mark, which right now we're looking at between now and December 15th. The next time we're going to check and see exactly where we are and discuss it with people who have made pledges is on December 15th or just after December 15th. Between now and then, we're just taking pledges, okay? Mm-hmm. We're only taking pledges because we're not giving out a lot of details. If it gets to the point where the pledge support is there to go ahead and proceed with a launch, then we will contact all the pledges, and tell them the details of exactly what we're doing, who's doing it.
Hold on right there, JB. I'm sorry. We've got to go to the break. Back in just a moment.